62, okay. And he eventually moved into the Roseland community, and there he became a choir director and activist. And he's had best-selling records in Italy, and even in the United States. He's written books of poetry. He is from Rende, the city of Rende, not any of those little small towns around Rende where people are low class. I'm just kidding. He's a proud son of Rende in Calabria, and he has done some books in the Calabrian dialect, and he has worked in, well, a couple of other things. Urban gateways. He's the Ella Jenkins of the Italian community, singing with little children, bigger children, at schools, Italian folk songs and other folk songs. And he also was a proud proprietor for many years of Harrison Tapes and Records, Italian records and tapes.
There's a little story that I want to tell.
And all sorts. So he's been, and he's one of the, he used to run the chorus of the Italian Cultural Center in the early days. And so he's been a cultural fixture in the Italian community for the last, in Chicago for the last 40-some years. And we're pleased to have him talk a little bit about his work and maybe make us aware of Johnny Palmer. Go ahead.
Okay, but I want to tell you something very important. When I came in America, you see, I was a recording artist in Italy. I made one album in 1961, then you know how I can. With La Voce del Padrone was the biggest company in Italy. We are one of the best group on the south side. This record went all over the world. It was published here when I saw from Capitol, in the French Pâté, in England Odeon, was a Quartetto Silano. Then when he came by me, you know, because I got so many instruments, flute, zufole, zamboni, piffere, I can open up a big museum. This was my idea for here, but then it dies. But anyway, still I got all these instruments. Then when he saw it, because I know how to play this instrument. Then when I came in America, before I came in America, believe it or not, my father came, because my father was in Africa for 10 years, for 9 years almost. And then he didn't want to come. He said, "Pa, go in America and this and that, the opportunity." My father came. Then if you don't come, if me and my brother, I will come back in Italy, forget about it. No, stays there. Then, I would il posto alla banca in that time was not easy. I was admitted alla Guardia di Finanza e era the first contractor in Milan, a company, to make a recording. 20 days before I left Italy, I went to Milan and I recorded 6:45 in it. And then I left. Took the boat took 15 days. In New York, we were there the 2nd of July. Then when we were not in New York, they lost me already. I came in Chicago the 3rd of July, shooting flags and this and that. We went by my place, you know, and the back of the Church of San Francesco di Paolo. It's a beautiful church, San Benedetto. You see a lot of fires. And then we found out it was the Florida. But it was my word. I tell you the truth, my first 10 years here in America was great. I made so many concerts. Then I became director of the choir of San Antonio. I remember when I was there, the choir director left. All the chorists, they left too. And then we were about 8 or 10 people. And then I don't know if you remember Padre Pietro Gandolfi. He was a director here.
Oh, right, right.
He came from Italy in that time, and then we rebuilt up the choir. It was beautiful. Then the liturgy changed and everything. 1970, 1969, Father Augusto went there, they pulled us here. And we started Italian church. Big library. Thank you, Doc. Yes,
Okay, that's first aid.
Doctor.
Pronto soccorso.
That's good. Thank you, Doc. And then we start the Italian Cultural Center. And I think we did a beautiful, great work. And I have to say thank you to Father Augusto because he worked so hard. And I remember we went to sell things, to build up books. I used to pick it up in my store, records, whatever, to sell at, the whatever they used to make to build up. It was good. And then Father left. Many of us left too. Things didn't change. The other one go on this. I close and then I wrote. I start with something important with the poetry. You see, I love the poetry. I wrote so many songs, a lot of music. I love the poetry because when I was a little kid, I started to write down. I'm finding this little piece of paper there and here. When I go to Italy, my old house, I said, son of a gun, I got so many things I can lose. Because my idea was to keep all the time, like I tell to my niece and my niece, they're good kids. Anything you write, put in a box, because tomorrow you're going to find it. And you got the idea how to build up to write something. And that's what I did. Anyway.
I just had an idea. We have to have an evening with
Yeah.
Pompeo Stillo coming up. He's just too big a personality and a story. So tell us about this book, Johnny Palmer.
Delitto non commesso. I did many concerts here. I have one letter that's beautiful that Padre Del Piazza wrote to me, saying something that made me proud.
Okay.
But anyway, this book that I published, it's a story from immigrant from San Fili. They come in America 1922, 22. And then there was something, the girl, a little complication. And this young boy, they fight with the boyfriend. She was, I'm putting some poor words, but anyway. They were friends, and they used to live on San Francesco di Paola Church. It was beautiful there, in the time. School and everything. They used to go to school together. And then they start to fight, and then he threw a rock. And then they took care. If I fall down, he was thinking, maybe he's dead. And then from that time, he started to run away. From home, he disappeared. They can't find him anymore. And then he went with it's okay. The Salvation Army, because he knew how to play accordion. They took that in New Orleans. He changed his name with Johnny Palmer. Finally, he went in the army. In the army, he was a translator of un Colonnello Nelson. There is some really story, but it's a fiction. Anyway, the Colonnello Nelson, they took him, like come si chiama, per fare interprete, as interprete. In the wartime, in 1941, 42, when the 43, when the Americans, they landed in Sicily, he started he wants to go home, where he come from. And then they make, he became, to make the story short and not to tell everything, he became a colonel. Then he built up in Florida, a beautiful place. The book starts when he's an old man. He went to look himself in the mirror and started to tell the story. And then his uncle, his father died here. His uncle that he loves him very much, he was in Villa Scalabrini. He went to visit, then he met a girl there. He got married. He came to the Feast of San Francesco here. There's something. Okay, this is my book. I have to tell another thing. You know,
it's in Italian.
It's in Italian, anyway.
And we're looking for a translator, if anybody wants to volunteer.
And this book, you know, was chosen from, this was is edizione del primo premio letterario, un libro amico per l'inverno. It's a contest. There was 1,800 books they sent to them. And they chose mine. No, I came in the 10 books. But in that time, when they were supposed to give, but under concorso, they said, you have to be there to get the rewards and the cup. But you're going to get la pergamena for sure. I was in the hospital. They interviewed me by telephone and said, I'm sorry. But they sent me the pergamena. It was for me. And they said, un libro amico per l'inverno, la commissione giudicatrice conferisce a Pompeo Stillo menzione speciale. I'm so glad.
Okay, so he's an award-winning author, and he's got everything else that
I'm sorry, but sure I have to tell another thing that's very important. You can imagine I was with the Urban Gateway for 13 years. I don't know if you know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah. I went to many schools. I met so many children. Beautiful. Now when I'm listing some, I got a lot of tips. Pictures, you know, I showed you,
Yeah.
300 children. Oh, it was great. Oh, I love
Great
it.
archive.
And then I was speaking English, believe it. Now I'm losing my English. You can imagine. When I listen with the choir of San Antonio, you know, to conduct them, I was screaming like hell, you know, in English. It's a sad, you know, now 50 years in America. I'm losing my English. Thank you very much for this. This is in the library.
Oh, great, great.
Oh, yeah, I can go home. I can.
Yeah, we'll forget that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to an evening with Pompeo in the fall. And our next speaker is Kathy Catronbone. Kathy's a longtime journalist, and she's the author of the very successful Arcadia book, Taylor Street, Chicago's Little Italy. Kathy?
That's quite an act to follow. Oh, he's back. But thank you, Dominic, and thank you everyone for being here. This is really it's a history book, and I hope a love letter to Taylor Street, which although there are other Italian neighborhoods in Chicago, this one had the most immigrants and coming through, and still retains somewhat of its Italian heritage. I'm just going to read a little bit from the introduction of the book, because basically, if you know about Arcadia, you have to have at least 200 photos before they'll let you do a book. And I just did a second book about Wakanda, Illinois, and 100 of those pictures were rejected because there are no pictures, and we had like 18th generation, and it was a very difficult book to put together. So this one was not as difficult, and what we try to do, my co-author and I, because we're both longtime journalists, in the captions we try to continue the story that we set up each chapter, and each chapter begins with the history of that topic. But there's only so many words that you can put on the page, and so we continued it. So we're hoping that as you read it, you get more and more of the history of the neighborhood. So since its inception, Chicago has been a city of immigrants, welcoming newcomers. In return, immigrants have made their mark on the city, and none have done so much than Italian Americans. From the plethora of Italian restaurants, the public officials who trace their ancestry to Italian parents or grandparents, and to the Catholic Archdiocese, Italian Americans have made a permanent impression on Chicago. The symbol for this history is Taylor Street, Chicago's Little Italy. Taylor Street has been on Chicago maps since the city's 1851 annexation of land east of Western Avenue. In the late 19th century, the area that is now called the Near West Side became known as Italian neighborhood. Taylor Street itself is the oldest continuous Italian neighborhood in the city. With the influx of Italian immigrants, the Catholic Church opened so-called national churches to serve the Italian population. The Hull House settlement offered Italian English classes, an Italian Mothers Club, and kindergarten programs. An eager ethnic workforce sought out manual labor and opportunities to open businesses. Taylor Street was not the only Italian neighborhood in the beginning, nor is it the only in the region. Since 2000, more than 500,000 people in the Chicago region consider themselves Italian, according to the U.S. Census. Italian enclaves were on Western and Grand, near the Merchandise Mart in the South Side, Roseland in particular. Italians have dispersed around the city, particularly to Harlem Avenue on the northwest side, and to the suburbs, first to Melrose Park and Elmwood Park, and now to Addison, Carroll Stream, Bloomingdale, and beyond. But as Italians moved away from the city center and assimilated, Taylor Street and its sister neighborhood, Tri-Taylor, the original starting points for many, have come to symbolize Italian heritage and culture in Chicago. And then we go on a little bit about what happened in the 20th century and with the university coming in, and what happened in the 1980s and 90s and beyond. And what's really interesting is that you could look at Taylor Street today in two ways. One, that it's very much a shadow of itself, that it's only a sliver of what used to be there. Or you can look at it as a feisty neighborhood that has hung on despite a major university coming in and demolishing most of it, and two highways, Dan Ryan and the Eisenhower. And now, and then we had the public housing, which really physically divided the neighborhood on Taylor Street. Now, when the public housing first went in the 30s and 40s, it was meant as a stepping stone. So a lot of Italian American GIs moved into these projects, and once they got a job and some savings, they moved on. And there's history of Jewish families before the Italians doing the same. What changed was in the 60s and CHA coming in, and the rules changed. And if you talk to longtime black families who used to live in public housing before that, it was very different from what we think of now for public housing. It was a community, it was a safe place to raise your children, etc. It was a place to get a leg up. Well, now fast forward 40 years or so, and so in the 90s they started planning other use for this land, and most of the projects on Taylor Street are gone except for one building. And now, I find it unbelievable, but the Treehouse Foundation, which is a privately owned and operated foundation, raised money for all kinds of wonderful things in the city. They have raised the money to start a national public housing museum that's going to be based on Taylor Street. Now, when this idea was first proposed a few years ago, you have people in the neighborhood who say, you know, we don't want the neighborhood to be known for its public housing. That's not the neighborhood history, it's only a small piece. I have to say that I pretty much agreed with that. We had a very interesting panel discussion at the end of May that the museum executive director put together about the history of Little Italy, and I was one of four on the panel. It was at the library on Taylor Street. Dominic came, and it was very interesting because this man who's the executive director has a whole different, he has no history of Taylor Street. He's coming in, and he was very surprised by what he was hearing that night, because the passion for this neighborhood still exists. And a lot of people who are gone from the neighborhood still very much identify themselves with the neighborhood. And if you ask them where they're from, their first name will be Taylor Street, even if they haven't lived there in 30 years. And what was very interesting, everyone in the audience was very passionate, and I think this man was kind of surprised he learned a lot that night. And what was really interesting, because people were saying, you know, why are the Italians ignored? Why don't we have a gateway at Taylor and Halstead and Taylor and Ashland? You are entering Little Italy. If you've ever been to Cleveland, you know, Cleveland is this darling Little Italy, and they have a little plaque, and I got out of the car and I took a picture of it. It was like, oh my gosh, you are now entering Little Italy, Cleveland. And so we talked about that, and we talked about renaming the library, because it's, I don't know why, who chose Theodore Roosevelt. But when it was built, there was some talk about naming it for Florence Scala, and she was alive at the time and very modest and did not want that. But just that night, such passion and all these ideas, and now this man has taken notice. And as the executive director of the National Public Housing Museum, he has the contacts and the ability to help us maybe get some of these things done in the neighborhood that we wanted to do. And he said to me, why hasn't, you know, I don't know if you know about the Puerto Rican neighborhood, like on is it Western Division?
Division Street, yeah.
Division Street, there's this huge, beautiful arch, you know, yeah, it's right, it's the flag of Puerto Rico, and it goes over the entire street. So when I'm saying, you know, it doesn't have to be that big, but something, you know. And so I was talking with him afterwards, and he said, well, it is in his best interest to have a thriving Taylor Street, and it is a thriving street, but I mean to have it more of an Italian identity, because then that will bring people to his museum. That they'll come to the museum, but then they'll stay in the neighborhood. And he also, and I said, well, you know, these are things people have talked about for years. And he said, well, why hasn't it been done? And I said, well, I think some of it is because of money. And he said the most beautiful words, money's no object. So I ask for your prayers that something is going to happen very soon. You know, I mean, this could be a year or two, I don't know. But the fact is that it's kind of interesting because you know, it's like this kind of was like the enemy coming into the neighborhood, but now it might be our best advocate to, and there's lots of talk, and it's just a matter of bringing people together. I know that there's, and he's been quoted in the paper, Scott Harris, who owns all the Francescas, and he owns Devontae that just opened on Taylor, oh, not just a year or so ago, it's doing very well. He has talked about wanting to get a butcher and you know, getting more kinds of businesses on Taylor Street, and kind of trying, you know, you can never like recreate the past, but to give people now a sense of what it was like and what it can be. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that there's still a lot of people in the neighborhood who see what it can be, and that I find very exciting.
Our next speaker will be Don Bono, who's an artist and whose book, Chicago Legends, Treasures, and Dreams, has found quite a nice market. Don?
Hello. I want to thank Dominic and, of course, Jacques and Jeanette for having us here. This is really great for us. I hope we all wind up with a great network of outlets. Anyway, I was born on Taylor Street. I was a half-breed. My dad was Italian, full-blooded. My mother was Irish and French. Because of that background, I either drank Chianti, homemade, from my Italian grandparents, or Irish coffee, depending on where I was visiting. And also because of that, I started frequenting Irish restaurants, Italian restaurants, Irish bars, and Italian bars. Got to know a lot of people. And later on in life, I drew a picture of one of the restaurants, and everybody loved it. One guy showed it to another guy, and showed it to another guy. Before I knew it, I had like 50 drawings of 50 restaurants. And then I gathered the stories of the owners, their struggles, coming to America. Great stories, wonderful stories. They're almost carbon copies of each other, because of a lot of stories that I read from all the other Italians, the immigrants that came here. I became interested in food in 1959 when I visited my dear friend George Abruzzo, who was in the Army stationed in Fort Stewart, Georgia. I went to visit him on a Thanksgiving weekend, and because he was the driver of the colonel, he got me a 2-day pass to stay there, and I lived in the Quonset hut with the soldiers. I was only 19 years old, but it was kind of fun. So that afternoon, I was invited to have lemonade with the colonel, Sione, and George, and the colonel's daughter, Rosalie. While we were having our lemonade, the colonel said to me, he says, "Do you cook?" I said, "Yeah, of course I cook. Isn't every Italian cook?" To impress him, I says, "I make a wonderful Italian sauce, Sicilian style, 150-year-old recipe." He says, "I want to talk to you later this afternoon." Then we finished with our lemonade. We left, come back that afternoon. He sat us down and he says, "Bono, I'm the colonel of this fort. And every year on Thanksgiving, we serve Thanksgiving, we serve turkey, mashed potatoes, dressing. This year, we're going to do Italian, and you're going to be the cook." And I said, "What?" I said, "I'm sorry, Colonel, my recipe is for 7 people, maybe 2 meals." He says, "You got 350 people on this base. There's no way I can do that." He says, "Don't worry about it. You just give the numbers to our mathematicians, and they'll figure it out. We got 350 people here to serve. We'll do it." I said, "Oh my God, what did I get myself into?" I opened my big mouth. I didn't have a clue on how to cook Italian spaghetti or Italian sauce. So we get outside of the meeting, and George and I are talking. I said, "George," I said, "I don't know what we're going to do here." I said, "I'm going to go AWOL. I'm getting out of here." He says, "No, you're not." He says, "Call your mother." I said, "Nope." I said, "We're not calling my mom. My mom's Irish. She doesn't know how to make Italian sauce. In fact, every time she makes it, I don't even go home. I go to my grandmother on the Bono side and eat. So does my father, so do my brothers." He said, "Well, call your grandmother." I said, "Well, all right." So I give her a call, and I tell her my dilemma. She says, "You got a big amount." So she gives me several pinches of this, sauce of that, tomatoes, this, that, and the other thing. For six people, for 2 meals. Gave it to the mathematicians in the Army, and they came up with it. And here's what they came up with. 100 pounds of neck bones, 100 cans of tomato paste, 65 pinches of oregano, 4 pounds of garlic, several bunches of basil, 2 gallons of olive oil, 250 beautiful Georgia tomatoes, 50 peppers, and 120 pounds of semolina spaghetti. Put it all in these vats, gigantic vats. It must be holding 100 gallons of liquid in there. Comes all out, all the people are sitting there. No one was more surprised than me how good it was. That day, Fort Stewart, Georgia, they named it Pretoria, Georgia. So that was my interest in food. And since then, I've learned how to make other food. Anyway, my book, when I first came up with it, it was an accident. I met with Rick Hogan. I'm sure you all know who Rick Hogan is. He's sort of the leader of Chicago and the literary families of our town. And I showed him my drawings. "Oh, great drawings." He said, "What else are you going to do?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you got to tell stories. How the restaurant started, maybe the history of the building itself, the owners, their struggles, blah, blah, blah." And I went around again after I did all the drawings and collected these wonderful stories from the various owners and their kids and their 3rd generations. Then I went back to them and said, "I need recipes." Wow, that's like cutting off their arm. Our recipes. We'll give you a recipe, but we're not going to tell you everything there is about our recipes. We're going to hold a little bit out, otherwise why come to my restaurant? So I collected these recipes, got them all printed up, put them in a book, and it was only about this thick. And Rick Hogan says to me, "You don't have enough here." He says, "Your book is a little thin." He says, "Beautiful, drawings are great, but people aren't going to pay for this book. It's kind of skinny. What else can you do?" we sat down, I said, well, I got 1,000 drawings of people portraits that I've drawn over the years. He said, well, how many you got from Chicago? I said, oh, tons. Pick out all your Chicago people. You know, sports stars, celebrities. Took their pictures together, wound up getting 35, 40 people. And only one woman in Chicago that I have drawn, who's not Italian, but she's a famous Chicagoan, Oprah. And there she is in the front page of all my drawings with all these Italian people, these sports people. So, the book came together, and that made it 30, 40 pages thicker, and still not a very thick book, but it's pretty good. I've been getting some pretty good critiques from people. The drawings are very succinct, actual, the brickwork and all the buildings, the grout lines, the shadows. And I explain how I draw the pictures and the difficulties that I've had with some and others quite easy. And here we are. Here I am today. Thanks. This is the first time I'm even speaking about my book, by the way, so I'm a little nervous, especially speaking to fellow Italians.
Really?
If you have any questions, fine. Other than that, I don't know what else to say about it other than buy my book.
Any questions, comments?
John, are those drawings up there?
Yeah, they're all drawings. I brought, what I do when I sell my books, I do signings at all these restaurants, by the way. And I sort of spread them out, maybe a couple a month. And they weren't going so well in the beginning until I started, my wife suggested, why don't you bring some of your drawings? And so now when I sell a book, I take 2 drawings. They're selling like crazy. You want the drawings more than you want the book. You want to
Okay, and that might be marketing.
Thank you for having me.
I'm reminded that there is a national organization, IAWA, Italian American Writers Association. Robert Viscusi of Brooklyn College is the longtime president of that organization. They're mainly based in New York, but you should look for them on the web at Italian American Writers Association. And they have a lot of activities in New York. And if you ever happen to travel to New York, you could probably hook into some sort of reading at a cafe or whatnot there and meet some interesting people. There's also the former American Italian Historical Association. It's now called the Italian American Studies Association. It's an organization that I've been connected with for many years as the president and at one time the executive director. And they hold a yearly conference. This year the conference is on Long Island, and it's the last couple days in November, the first couple of days in December. And if you would like to present something at their deadline has just passed, but they're famous for accepting late suggestions. So it's at Hofstra University, the last couple of days, the Friday, Saturday, the last couple of days in November, first day or two in December. And you can find them on the web, Italian American Studies Association. They have a Facebook page as well. Okay, Bruno Curtis is with us. Bruno's a doctor who's been a cardiologist who's been around the Italian American community for a while. He's written several books and is into preventive maintenance of the human body, corpus humanus, and he's got a new book. Come up and tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's an immense joy to be here with you, and I thank Professor Candeloro for giving us the joy of discovering each other. We are in the same city and we don't know each other. So he was very generous.
You'll get an
Excellent.
invitation next year too, so.
Okay, I've been a cardiologist for a long time, and there was a moment when I became ill myself, and I discovered that we physicians can get cancer as well. So at the beginning, when this happened, I couldn't see the future anymore because of the experience. But then with the medical care, the help of God, the love of the family, I was able to recover. And I realized that the word cancer in reality is an acronym, which stands for I can see. Because now I see life in a different way. Every moment is a joyful moment. Every day is meaningful. And that is in essence what I wrote about it. Initially I was a sort of ashamed because, you know, physicians are supposed to be healthy. So I thought, well, physician gets sick, is not worth any longer anything. He's sick. I can't even take care of himself. But there are things that are beyond our control. So I said, well, maybe I can help other people by sharing my experience, inspiring them. And that gave me the courage to write this Heal Your Cancer. Thank you.
Okay, great, okay, well, we want to have copies of your works, and we're willing to buy the copies to show that, you know, we value it. We also accept donations, obviously, since we don't have a really big budget, but we've got some budget. And we want you to be in touch with us to use our library. We've developed a new system whereby if you promise us your firstborn, if you don't bring the book back, we will lend books and videotapes to you. Actually, it's your credit card, and $50 on your credit card if you don't bring the damn book back. And of course, we have to have your driver's license and your fingerprints.
And your first one.
And if you were born in Hawaii, you're in trouble. Well, so thank you very much. Thank you for supporting the Casa Italia, for supporting each other. I hope that you've met each other, exchanged contact information. If anybody needs contact information, I'll probably send out a follow-up email with everybody's email address in, so you can keep spamming.